Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Deputy. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I like this case being an episode where we really get to learn a lot more about Cade. Obviously, he ends up investigating this dude, Dennis's murder, because it turns out Dennis was a veteran. And the fact of the matter is, well, because for one, it's an encampment, so it's like they're kind of like being treated as like people who are forgotten. It's just kind of like, because it turns out there have actually been like murders in that encampment before, but the fact of the matter is, when they've called the police, it's never led to anything. So because like Dennis's buddy came and found Cade while they were handling like chasing after a suspect who had did a robbery or something like that. And so, obviously, this case is very important to Cade because we end up learning that Cade was actually very similar to Dennis. That after his, time with the military, he ended up spending time on the streets. He even talks about later on he had addiction. It's like, you never would have known something like that. And I think that kind of made this episode really powerful, understanding because why this case is so important to Cade, because he's like, this is a decorated veteran who shouldn't be forgotten. And the fact of the matter is, he also sees himself as Dennis. He's like, that could have been me at, living on the streets, and, thinking about where he was and how he got to where he is now. The fact is, he has a family, so that's why this case is so important to him. Obviously, the detective that's leading the case is kind of like pushing him out. But the fact of the matter is, Bill kind of steps in and says, like, no, Cade's not taking over the investigation. He's just here more so to make sure it's steered in the right direction. Because, Bill wants to be there for Cade because he realizes how big and, like, how hard this whole situation is for him. So he's willing, he's trying to be there to make sure that Cade's okay. And obviously, they work through the case because at first it's like, all right, maybe the drug dealer behind who is the one who killed Dennis. Because it turns out Dennis, obviously, he was going into meetings, he was getting sober. But the fact of the matter is, more recently, he was using more, so they're thinking maybe his drug dealer did it. But the drug dealer didn't do it, but he did steal his Purple Heart, because it was like, because he's like, it was kind of the money that Dennis owed him. But it turns out Dennis wasn't just like there on the streets just randomly. Like, he was actually there protecting them. It's like from themselves, as well as just people from the outside as well. So Cade kind of learns about this from going to a meeting, and like I said, he kind of opens up about his situation, because it turns out like his vice was alcohol. And so for him, it's like this whole thing made him realize like how, it's just one of those reminders of just how fragile life can be. Like even his sobriety being so fragile. The fact of the matter is, and it's kind of interesting because it kind of reminds me of the show Elementary. Like Sherlock in Elementary is very much like that, where he worked to try and, balance his sobriety, but like realizing like, because now I think even Cade's more aware of like how much he relies on his job to be a means to kind of help with his sobriety, yet how fragile that situation could be, because he even admits he hasn't been to a meeting in a very, very long time. And I thought that was, it was just a very powerful moment for him. Like I brought up earlier, like he has a family now, and the thing is, like, he has so much more to lose now, and and that's the scariness of it. I mean, it's a good thing to be scared of, like, having something to lose, because it means you have something to lose, something that can help push you and keep you on the right track to stay sober, to keep doing what you're doing. And so I thought that was just a very powerful moment. It's actually sad when you get into the nitty gritty of the case and understanding like what ended up happening, trying to figure out, because at first it seems like, all right, here's this security guard, and he even like refers to like, I was like, oh yeah, it's like The Walking Dead out there, right there from the very beginning. The moment he fact is he cracks a joke like that kind of shows you like how little he looks at people, and it's like, holy, like even later on, like when it because Cade is pushing him, being like, oh, why did you do this? This guy was a decorated war veteran. He's like, wait, what? He's like, no, that can't be. It's like, and he says, I didn't realize he was somebody. And Cade says, everybody is somebody, even you. And it's like, that right there shows you, because like I said, he sees them as like something else, like they're not even people. And just like, how could you even have that mentality to look at someone else like that, like as something else? There are people who've been through things that led them to that situation. They're just like any other person. They're just less fortunate. Like life just, fell through. Like what are the, I mean, everyone's story is different, but it's just so interesting that he would even look at someone different. And it's like, now that you know that he was a veteran, now like his life had meaning in a sense. And I think that's also a whole problem with this whole thing too, that even Cade and them had a problem with. It's like, this case wouldn't, like, it's like, because the case was already kind of getting brushed off because he was already living in the streets. They also heard that, hey, there were other cases that kind of got brushed off because he was just random people on the street. So, their cases didn't take priority. And if, Cade hadn't kind of stepped up for this particular case, his case would have gotten swept under, it would have just been kind of in a backlog type of situation, which is, it's actually sad to think that anyone can be like, just like, a backlog case that, we'll get to at some point in time, but maybe they won't. I'd actually forgot to talk about, because Cade actually talked about the fact is it wasn't just him on the streets, his sister too, and he doesn't even know if she's dead or alive, because he looked for her but he never found her, because he got off the streets but she never did, so he never knew what happened to her. And for him, he's scared to actually go looking because he doesn't want to lose his family all over again. He's already kind of lost her, and I think he's afraid that if he goes looking for her, either like he's going to like stumble down that rabbit hole and lose his current family, or it could be that he was talking about like not finding her again is going to be like losing her all over again. So that's multiple ways you could be interpreting it. And maybe when he said that, he meant the former and the latter in that regard, But it turns out that the security guard that killed Dennis was actually working for this company that's basically trying to build, like, one of the buildings they're trying to build is like a yoga studio or something like that. But basically they were trying to like make it so that like, all right, once a murder's there and, and everything, like maybe they'll kind of round up the encampment and kind of move them out of the way. And that's what this was all about. Because it's like, you'd have to like wade through a lot of those people to get to the said building that they were building. So it's like, they end up publicly arresting like the head honcho of the business because he made a direct wire transfer to the guy. And it's like, and I love Bill being like, yeah, this is kind of a show everyone that just because smart and rich basically don't correlate, that you don't, just because you're rich don't mean you're smart, so as he made, a rookie criminal mistake. But it's sad to kind of figure out that that's what this was all about. But it's also because Dennis protected those people there. So, like, that was also another reason to kind of knock him in particular, kill him in particular, because there were probably other murders, but it's like his particular murder because he was the one that was kind of standing in the way of, no, I'm looking after these people. Because he had already gotten off the streets, but then he had gone back to kind of, make sure everyone was okay, and I think probably going back to make sure everyone was okay kind of made him kind of fall back into that, system again, but it's a sad situation. I mean, there is no like, I don't know, there's no like silver lining to it. I mean, granted, they were able to take down a bad guy, but it doesn't necessarily bring Dennis back. It's sad to understanding like he had no family except for like the people at the meeting, because the dude who was leading the meeting was like, yeah, we're kind of the only family he had, and so I thought it was pretty neat that Cade ends up bringing the Purple Heart and giving it to the dude to be like, because initially he doesn't want to take it, but he's like, if you stick around, maybe I'll consider, kind of keeping it, here and everything. And I thought that was kind of a beautiful, sentiment. And I think probably, maybe it'll get brought up throughout the episodes, future episodes, but Cade might start, going to meetings more, especially because, being there for people who, who he can understand their situation because he's been there himself. He told his story before. Maybe he can help other people out too. I mean, we even see at the end of the episode, him, Teresa, and the kids are handing out stuff to everyone in the encampment. So, what's the paying it forward? It's, the phrase that I was trying to think of. So I thought that was kind of neat. And since we're on the subject of Cade and his family, we do see them kind of bonding and getting closer. And that was the biggest question I was wondering about. I was like, all right, so what about you and oldest son? Like, what's going? And he's like, yeah, I don't want to kill you anymore because my sister, she likes it here. She likes you. The dog, even though I don't like the name Bella, because it's a stupid name, she likes you too. So. And, him and, Cade hug, and it's like, oh, okay. I'm liking that resolve of like, yeah, because for Cade, it isn't just like, it's like, no, we're family. And, it's like, even if you're adopted, that means loving someone forever. It's kind of like, what Teresa was reminding him at the beginning. So I thought it was, like I said, it's just a beautiful situation on that front. it's just on the conversation of family. There's a whole situation with Maggie and Paula, because Paula is obviously still dealing with the like, like she doesn't really talk about. She's just like, oh, that stress of, like everything at, working at, the hospital and everything. But she's not really telling Bill. It's like she's still remembering, like, being taken hostage and everything like that. Because Bill kind of sees it as like, yeah, it's just everything that you've been through recently. And it seems like they're going through therapy sessions, because there's a therapist who kind of shows up, because it's just Maggie and Paula for this first session. And obviously for Maggie, she kind of brings up a lot of her issues with her. Like, she's saying that basically what happened to Paula was because, what happened to her mom was because of her dad's position. They took it. It was a culmination of many different things. She was a, doctor in close proximity. They knew that she had the skills necessary, but also they knew they could benefit from the fact is, but it also did stem from the fact is, we also know that we could use you because we know that you're the sheriff's wife. And so it's that situation of Maggie explaining like, hey, like, my situation is complicated even at school, because like I have people who are cool with me because they think I can, benefit them, my dad being sheriff and everything, but other people kind of ice her out. So, especially that's got to be a rough thing for a teenager to go through, like, once again, even the last episode kind of shows you she is under scrutiny. Like, there's, like, everyone's watching her, because once again, what she does is kind of a reflection upon her dad and who he is and his principles. So that's a whole complicated thing in itself. But obviously it's a hard thing for Paula too, because it's like, none of them knew that this was going to happen when they signed up. None of them knew that this was going to be a situation, no one would have saw this coming, because if they did, like, obviously Bill wouldn't have, because even Bill was like, this job kind of landed in his lap, and if he knew that his family couldn't handle it, because he sees, Paula and Maggie as very strong, because he looks at how they've stood by his side, they've handled it so far. He's like, I know it hasn't been the easiest thing, but if I thought for a second you guys wouldn't be able to handle it, I wouldn't have taken this job in the first place. But for him, it's that complicated thing of like, well, what do you do next? Because it's like, are you going to back Jerry? And he was like, just because I, might not be continuing the sheriff thing doesn't necessarily mean I will back Jerry. And obviously Paula's like, well, what plans do you have? He's like, doesn't mean I really have any plans. She's like, I don't think that's 100% true. So it's, well, for him, it's like, we make this decision together. Like, if I decide to go for it, we have to kind of make that decision together. So I think for Bill, he is considering it. Like, he never considered it before. I don't know if he ever dreamed of going for sure. He was probably comfortable where he was. Especially because, because even Paula had brought it up. The fact is that, she was always worried about, like, okay, like, whether he'll step through that door or not, with his prior job. Now she's worried what he's bringing with him anytime he comes home, because there's, once again, sheriff and everything. So camera crews, people all up in his business, people that want to go after him are going to come after Paula and Maddie. So it's that whole situation, so, it seems like they might be a little more on I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how Bill handles that going forward. Another avenue in this episode I think was really interesting is the whole situation with, revolving around this Jerry situation, because for one, you have, Joseph being like, yeah, it's actually kind of a good thing that Bill does what he does. Like, Jerry's just going to take us back. And that was also Bill's statement, because the fact of the matter is, it's like, whoa, you're telling me you want to, go ahead and have me align with, Jerry. It's like, he's running for sheriff. He hasn't gotten a job yet, but you guys are acting like it's such a guaranteed thing. It's like, well, no one's running against him. Yeah, but he doesn't have the job yet. So until he has the job, I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm aligned with what I want the future of this department to look like. And I think it's so interesting. Once again, you kind of get caught up in the politics of it, which obviously Bill tries not to. But it's a complicated, situation. And so even like you can see, it's not a big thing, but even the thing between Joseph and Charlie speaks volumes, because Charlie's like, well, there's a system. It's like, yeah, Bill shook stuff up, but like, obviously there's a way that things have kind of been before, that it's like, continuity is kind of the word she was looking for. So it's like things, it's like we need structure, and it's like she's kind of fine with some of what Bill does, but at the same time she did. But the same thing is, would you feel that same way if Jerry wasn't offering you something in return? Because that was even something that Jerry was like, yeah, I want something for the future of the department, and Bill was like, no, Jerry It's for you. Never get those two things confused of like, oh, something you thinking is better for the department. No, it's better for you. So don't get that twisted, essentially. So I'm like, the same thing for Charlie. Can she honestly say that she doesn't have a biased opinion in this situation? You are getting a promotion and stuff like that out of this. Like you deserve it. Definitely feel that definitely feel that you deserve it too. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, there's give and take with it, a little old school, a little new school, keeping some structure of the past, sure, but also making changes, building upon that structure in a new direction, because even Bill was like, he's thinking he's making a little headway, that he feels like he is kind of, changing things for the better. So, so that was kind of interesting. I also love that Joseph and Charlie moment at the end where she was like, wait, are you flirting? He's like, no. If I was, you know it, because I walk by, I'd stop. You see that I'm not looking at you, but I'm looking at you. And then I hit you with the dimples. I'm like, dude, shut up. I love it. He's like, because if I wasn't flirting with you, because if did, you'd know. So that was cute. But obviously at the end, we also see Charlie working, sending him some stuff, because obviously she's working for Jerry. It's like, once again, you're my eyes and ears. So it's like, send me anything on Bill. I'm wondering what it is that she looked up on Bill that she found. Like what dirt, Maybe there's stuff from Bill's past that kind of will give Jerry the leg up, because I think at the end of the day, Bill is going to run for sheriff. It's going to be interesting to see. Right now I think he's still in the process of thinking, but I think there's also a part of him that has kind of already made up his mind. He's just trying to figure things out. Hell, he even confronts that dude who is like the head of like their budgets and stuff like that, because he's also on the board of that company that dude. The murderer, the guy who hired that security guard in this episode, like he's on the same board as that dude's company. So it's like, he had already came to Bill early in the episode about like, oh, we need to get those people out that, get them into shelters and stuff like that. And it's like, now you kind of see why. Now it kind of makes sense. Bill's like, that's why you wanted them out of the way so badly. Like, you couldn't get me to do it. Well, you already had someone else trying to do it. So now you're trying to get me to do it as well because it was unsuccessful. So it's like, okay. So that was interesting. So he's kind of guilty by proxy because he kind of, he's shady in his own right. I mean, granted, he might not have hired a hit, but it's like you wanted that shift, and change for your own particular reasons too. So it's like you didn't have altruistic reasons. But another interesting element to this episode is also the whole situation with Bishop, because, Kay talked about it. It's like, oh, like, how are you feeling since the accident? And Bishop's like, I'm good. And, Bishop's trying to figure out, what's next, because being a driver just isn't enough. It's like, at first, that's okay. Working with the sheriff and everything, it's cool, but it's like, that's not what Bishop wants. So it's a situation of, and I like what Kate says. It's like, the fact of the matter is, Bill's going to support you no matter what. He just wants you to make a decision that, and, stick with it, ride it out. So it's like, that's it. Because even Kate was like, saying that Bill should run. But obviously Bill was like, it's not that simple. And then Kay was like, maybe it is, so. But Bishop does admit that she wants more. Like, the fact of the matter is a thing of, because Bill looks into why Bishop, the cloud that's kind of above Bishop's head when it comes to previous job, like how, like someone, because it's like, because from the very beginning, like, Bishop is like, I kind of want more, and Bill's almost like, finally, it took you long enough, I've been waiting. It's like, you always knew I was capable more. It's like, the moment you showed up, I looked into your file, I call your superior, I know what went down, and the fact of the matter is, I don't care. People should be able to give an opportunity to kind of rewrite their story, and I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, I'm curious to find out what it is that went down. Like I said, we're learning bits and pieces about Bishop, and I'm curious to we learned a lot about Cade's past in this episode. I'm very interested in the next episode, not the literal next episode, but the future episode that lets us kind of dive into Bishop's past and kind of understand how Bishop got to where she is right now, But it is a situation of like, wait, she wants this particular job. It's like, well, that doesn't technically exist. And it's like, well, Majors kind of didn't technically exist until you kind of took over. And it's like, okay. So Bishop is, looking for, and I think Bill's kind of happy to do whatever, just because it's like, hey, I know that you're going to be good in this position. And it's like, I think she's looking for more an intelligence angle as part of Majors. So I think that's a good spot to be in. So Because I was almost wondering, it's like, well, because I was about to say, like, would she be one of his deputies or something? Is that the position? But I guess it would be kind of a downgrade with her skills and her job level and everything. But it's like, it's kind of a thing of like, yeah, working more specifically in the intelligence angle of Major, so I think it's pretty all a nice fit. And even, obviously saying that, like, having to decide what you want. Basically, she was saying, like, all the advice that Bill was giving her, it's like, you should kind of take it for yourself as well, which, kind of got him thinking about it as well. So I'm very interested to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.